So after 9/11, Wesley Clark said this. He said, we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years. And what they were talking about, and this is important, were countries where those central banks that exist were not on board to do programmable money. And their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller Rothschild model. And there was an effort to say, okay, we're basically going to assert control of the central banks in those countries. And this is an interesting theory. And I think, and some people will say, oh, well, central banks don't control this. Well, you know what? One of the things that we've seen in this government, and it's been eye-opening, and it's been dismaying, and it's been discouraging and disappointing in a way because people are going along with Trump, for example. And I understand that a lot of people hate him in Congress because they're afraid of their power, their prestige, their entitlement, their paychecks, and their insider trading information that they get in order to go from something like in the hundreds of thousands when they entered Congress to in the millions just 2 or 3 or 4 years after. And how did that happen? So you have this, and they're afraid of that, and they're not going to jeopardize that. And that's disappointing because that's not government in service, or their government service is being compromised so that they can enrich themselves. And that's unfortunate. But we could speculate, and I think it's worthwhile, based on what I just stated, that it's basically a lie to say that money doesn't enter into this and that banking institutions and central banks, and we're not in favor of central banks, we're not in favor of the Federal Reserve. Why? Because it's a central bank, it's not a national bank. And to say anything else is just putting lipstick on a pig. And I think we've done a show on the Federal Reserve. We may need to do more about that. And I am not wedded in any sense to what people call conspiracy theories, but I do know facts and I do understand these things, which is why I'm on this show and talking to you now. Somebody knew that I understand these things and had confidence in me that I could convey them to the KCAA and indeed the podcasting public on YouTube and Instagram and so on and so forth. So I don't fear and I don't withhold and I don't blanch to make these kind of statements and bring them to your attention because this is upstream analysis. This is upstream commentary. So, okay, one of the reasons you could conjecture, and I think it would be a good conjecture, I don't think it would be idle and unsupported and unstructured. One of the reasons you could say is we're seeing so much tension around Iran right now is because Iran is the big leakage in the system. So you might say, well, all right, hold on a minute. I thought it was because Iran was going to bomb Israel. So it's not about their nukes? Well, so far as we know, they don't have nukes because we've been sanctioning them and proscribing them so that that doesn't happen. But I would say consider the levels of truth. Consider Iran's central bank. And maybe that counts. And maybe one of the reasons it counts is because their oil and their energy is very important, including for who? Well, including for China. And that's very important in the system that has come to be known by the acronym BRIC,